Welcome to Living with Purpose. Fabulous guest today, Beth Knight. You will hear her story and her journey. I met Beth several years ago when my book Purpose Mindset came out, and Amazon was kind enough to have me share my book to their employees. And Beth actually moderated the conversation. At that time, Beth was running the sustainability group for Amazon based out of the UK for part of the world. And one of the things that I learned from her is the amount of work that they were doing because of COVID. And then the work that they did when we got the Ukraine war started and mobilizing employees and resources and communications and setting up these distribution centers. So I was just very impressed with what Beth has been doing. And I invited her to go to a conference that I used to go to in Egypt, but we missed each other there. So I've never physically met Beth, but I've seen and communicated with her on Zoom. So with that, Beth, welcome to Living with Purpose.
Thank you very much. Kindred spirits, it's a pleasure to be here. So thank you for the invitation.
I really want to just start off by share with us your journey. Who's Beth and what your journey is?
My background is I'm from a very small village in Cornwall. So, Cornish girl, fairly working class background. Got a scholarship to the University of Exeter and then found my way into management consulting. I started my career at Accenture and started working on technology for good and organizational change, working with large clients like Oxfam, but also traveling around the world. I had the pleasure of living and working in Chennai in India for a while, and then found that I wanted to use my skill for something that was very purposeful, where I could see the real life impact and benefit to people from the work that I do. And so around 15 years ago, I sort of pivoted full time out of consultancy and into a combination of like advisory and in-house roles. Spent some time at Ernst & Young, building out a corporate responsibility function in financial services, led a purpose-led business think tank for a strategy unit in EY Global. And then at the start of the pandemic, I joined Amazon, which is what you alluded to in the opening just there. So I joined Amazon at the start of the pandemic at a time when their commercial business model was scaling rapidly, right? We can all remember that time during COVID when everyone was at home and needing help. And so my initial brief there was to help expand the impact of the community investment work. So a number of things that the company can be really proud of in that response there. That ranged from 2.4 million food deliveries up and down the UK to children that were at risk of malnutrition. That was with a large charity called Magic Breakfast, through to like large scale product donations, grants programs. And that really, in the European business at Amazon, which is where I was working, that started to develop that muscle of sort of catalytic philanthropy and community investment that hadn't really existed in that part of Amazon's work at scale prior to that. That was very impactful. It was sad that that work was needed, obviously, because of what was going on in the world at the time. But in parallel, the US teams were growing their disaster relief programming, led by Bettina Sticks and now Abe Diaz. And when the Ukraine war broke out, I received a phone call from my boss and I was asked if I would lead that work. It's not sort of something that you tend to say no to, but it was a big career moment for sure. Nobody knew what was going to happen at the time, right? We didn't know if it was going to last for 6 weeks or, we're still at war now. Not as much media coverage, but, Ukraine is still defending its borders. And so that program grew and we had an extended team of around 250 people at one point, a value chain with lots of commercial and charity partners, including Save the Children, where we were donating products as people were crossing the border. We were helping with shelter, clothing, to an extent, transportation. Really, the sort of stories that stay with you, to be honest. Things like leaving prams as donations at the Polish train stations so that when Germany opened free tickets to Ukrainian refugees, they could comfortably take their children across Europe. Not carrying them in their arms, things like that, that sort of work just really does stay with you. And now I'm at Lloyd's. So,
so talk a little bit about what you're doing at Lloyd's.
Yes, so I'm at Lloyd's Banking Group. I've been there for 5 months now, so it's still fairly fresh and new role. A constant theme in my career has been working at that intersection of public-private partnership, systems change, typically that kind of large multinational in a finance or tech sector. So Lloyd's Banking Group are doing some amazing work using the financial instruments at their disposal to try and help people, underserved business communities in particular, in this world to prosper and thrive. So my team is within the commercial bank, and we're looking at everything from supporting diverse founders to scale and grow their businesses, through to solving for market failure by helping to grow the community development finance market in the UK. Something which is more mature in the US, but fairly nascent over here. Check back with me in a year's time, and we'll see how we've got on. But I'm really enjoying the job, and it's a wonderful company to work for sure.
And you also have a position at the Cambridge Sustainability Institute or Institute for Sustainability. Talk a little
Yeah,
about that.
CISL. We love acronyms in sustainability fields. Yeah, so it's the University of Cambridge Institute of Sustainability Leadership. Yeah, probably about 10 years ago, I realized I was doing lots of work in systems change and purpose-led business, but I wasn't qualified, and I felt like I needed a postgraduate course or a master's under my belt that gave me some confidence beyond just what was kind of practical and lived experience. So I went in, I would think I was in the second or third cohort of the master's program there. And at the time, the patron was Prince Charles, so that was a big deal. And we had Prince William go through the course the year I was there. So very interesting being at Cambridge University for one thing, which is an amazing academic environment, and then having a member of the royal family there with their security team as you're trying to learn. He was incredibly humble, and it was wonderful to kind of have him there. And I just got really engaged with the content and the academic environment. And I felt like I need this. I want to keep myself learning. I'm very kind of intellectually curious, and I want to strive for best practice. So academia has become part of my identity now. And so I work with CISL and have done ever since. And now I'm head tutor on their online business sustainability management course. And I do guest lecturing on organizational change and sustainability for executives and boards.
This is awesome. So let's talk about purpose and why is purpose important to you and how are you living a life with purpose?
At its root, purpose is the reason for being, right? Like, what are you going to do with your life? Which is it's that big philosophical question. I first started using the word purpose in an organizational context because we were looking at it at Ernst & Young, and we were talking about company purpose. And at the time, it was a very strong corporate affairs, branding and strategy discussion to help stitch environment, social impact and governance thinking into the DNA of organizations to try and leave the world better than you found it, add something more in pursuit of running your business. And I think that naturally, I'm probably somebody that I wear my values on my sleeve. I've often had feedback that my face needs to be less expressive. If I'm not bought into an idea or concept, you will see that. Or if I'm really engaged in something, I'll be bouncing around and chatting. And I like to think that I'm a purpose-led leader. So I'm sure I can improve. But examples of how I live that with the Ukraine work that I was leading, it's been the largest influx of refugees that Europe has ever seen since the Second World War. And that movement of people happened within a 2-month period. And so it felt very wrong to be leading a $100 million value chain project with Amazon and have spare rooms in my house. We had a Ukrainian family move in and live with us. They now are still living with us. That work has stayed with me, 2 grandmas, a mother and her daughter. And so our house is filled with laughter and shared meals. And we had a very fun mash-up Christmas meal with a British roast, Ukrainian dishes, all sorts of things. To be honest, I have got as much joy and fulfillment out of being a host to a family of refugees at a very kind of real level in my home as I have from the impact of that very large engagement that I led with Amazon. I think it just goes to show you can get your sense of purpose at all levels of your identity if you engage with it that way.
No, that's awesome. So talk a little bit about how are you using purpose, especially when times get tough.
I'm a mum,
Yes.
have 2 small humans that I have to keep alive and thriving. I've got this responsibility of this family that lives with us from the Ukraine, and my mum lives next door. So during the pandemic, actually, my husband and I, we sat down and we sort of we would it started off with us trying to write a bucket list to fill our life with joy and to make us happy. And then we realized to start really feeling joyful, more joyful in our lives and more purposeful. And one of the things on the list was that I'd like to be closer with my family, with my mother. And so we moved houses. We found somewhere with an annex so that my mum could live with us if she wanted to. She brings me cups of tea and props me up, and we play Scrabble of a weekend. And for me, using that combination of like what brings me joy, how I can feel at the end of the day that I've done something good. Being brave, I think I also try and do things that scare me sometimes, just to make sure that I am testing myself to make sure that I'm living my life fully. That could be doing something around the house. It could be going on an adventure. So I'm off to Kenya in November with Save the Children because I spend most of my day at my desk, quite honestly, in a work capacity. And I felt like I wanted to physically meet some of the people that I'm trying to help in the world and really get to understand them more and their culture. So it's those sorts of things I think that I try and maintain within how I live my life.
I love the fact that so many people I've been talking to on this podcast and in my classroom are all talking about showing up with joy.
Mm.
That if you show up with joy and do something on a daily basis, on a weekly basis that brings you joy, because joy only comes by it not just being for yourself. It comes because you actually done it together with somebody else. And to me, that's a very important difference between joy and happiness. Happiness, I believe, is actually very personal. You are going to be happy. Others don't need to be happy with you. Joy, you can only be joyful if there are others sharing that joy with you. So I found that word that people have started using about joy to be absolutely so important. So I hope our listeners actually take this and just jot down on a daily basis how or when you feel joyful and what is making you joyful and who else is participating with you in that process. And that to me is that journey of being purposeful. So, Beth, let's end this conversation with you sharing with us your one golden nugget, a word of wisdom that you live by that you want to share with our audience.
For me, I'll steal your phrase because you put it so well, but it's about focusing on what brings you joy. I think so much of this world can be uncertain. You can feel overwhelmed. But if you surround yourself with moments of joy or people that give you energy, it enables you to show up as your best self. And that's where the creativity and the impact comes in everything that we do.
Beth, thank you very much for this wonderful conversation. And it's just so humbling to hear that you have opened up your home to people in need. And that to me is just such a motivating piece of advice where all of us can do that in very simple ways. So, Beth, thank you very much for joining us on this episode of Living with Purpose. Again, remember, purpose is that renewable source of energy that moves humanity forward. Beth, thank you very much.
Thank you.